Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the 7th annual Asia Pacific Public Electronic Procurement Network Conference. My name is Roger Osorio, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies over the next few days. I'm an executive coach, speaker, author, and Ivy League instructor. I'm based in New York City, and I've previously supported events for the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and last year I facilitated this very event. It is my great pleasure to be back here with all of you, virtually of course, and excited to have all of you tuning in from over 20 different time zones around the world. To formally open the conference this year, we have two very important guests with their own special message for us. First, we are excited to have Mr. Bruce Gosper, the Vice President for Administration and Corporate Management at the Asian Development Bank. Mr. Gosper is responsible for the overall management of the operations of the Budget, People, and Management Systems Department, Corporate Services Department, Office of the General Counsel, the IT Department, Office of the Secretary, and Procurement, Portfolio, and Financial Management. Without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Mr. Gosper to share a few words with us.
Well, thank you very much, Roger. Good morning, and a very warm welcome to the seventh annual conference of the Asia Pacific Public Electronic Procurement Network. And it's a pleasure to be joined by all of you from 20 different time zones. I think I heard Roger. In particular, welcome to the Honourable Kim Chung-woo, Administrator Public Procurement Service, Republic of Korea. Colleagues from the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. The opening contracting partnership, distinguished procurement professionals from the Asia Pacific region. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, COVID-19 brought multiple challenges to the procurement function. First, the imperative need to urgently supply and deliver PPEs, testing kits, therapeutics, and ventilators. Added to this was the complete disruption to non-COVID supply chains and procurement processes because of border closures, lockdowns, and work from home arrangements. And this was followed almost immediately by the global rush to procure, supply, and deliver vaccines. Often with the added challenge and complications of disrupted logistics chain, continued border closures and quarantine regulations. Today, the tide is turning to mitigating the economic damage from the pandemic while tackling the many challenges which face our regions. All these factors brought procurement to the forefront of public attention. Many governments and public sector organisations found themselves dealing with these new challenges using sometimes outdated tools. Agile and resilient digital technology fit for modern procurement challenges is no longer a preference. It is a necessity. The COVID-19 pandemic greatly accelerated the adoption of virtual and remote work. Organisation and businesses now aim for high levels of security and agility not provided by legacy applications. Real-time cloud solutions are on the rise. In the new normal, innovative procurement tools such as chatbots, blockchain, big data, and artificial intelligence are expected to reshape the whole supply chain in an ethical, inclusive, sustainable, and resilient manner, while at the same time minimizing the risks. But it is not all about the technology. Embracing digital technology for the challenges of today and tomorrow cannot be done in isolation from developing procurement talent and moving procurement from a tactical to a strategic role, with data-driven procurement informing the policy debate. Developing procurement talent requires both soft skills, such as relationship building, capacity to focus on strategic objectives, as well as hard skills, such as robust data analytics and scenario modelling. On the sustainability front, a high topical issue with the COP26 summit that has just ended, procurement can have a critical role. Contracting authorities could set targets, for example, on carbon emission reductions, reforestation, or reduction of waste that would have ripple effects down the supply chain. The rate and speed of adoption of such targets by market players will be determined by the breadth and the depth of ambitions set by governments and businesses. This can change the way in which we approach procurement and define value for money. Wide-ranging collaboration and innovation will be key to reaching sustainability targets. As a trusted development partner, ADB continues to add value by providing support to developing member countries by combining finance, knowledge and partnerships. As a knowledge partner, ADB's value addition lies not only in identifying and sharing best practices, but also in providing advice on how to successfully adapt a particular practice to local conditions. As a convener of partnerships, ADB promotes dialogue and collaboration among stakeholders. This is demonstrated by ADB's ongoing support to the Asia-Pacific Public Electronic Procurement Network. The post-pandemic recovery requires us to jointly address global challenges. We believe that further improvement of national public procurement systems, including through digitalization, will contribute to such efforts. We hope that the network will be a very important contributor to this process and play a stronger role still through better collaboration amongst the members. The next 3 days will provide opportunities to learn about emerging issues and significant innovations in public procurement, including the pilot use of blockchain technology to streamline supplier qualifications verification and strategic use of procurement to achieve social, environmental and ethical objectives. In short, we are here to learn about new and exciting things happening. Perhaps that's a change from the dry world of procurement, but it is an exciting time. Many challenges ahead, and lots of contributions to be had through the network. I'm looking forward to this knowledge sharing opportunity. I encourage everyone, our guests and colleagues from ADB member countries, multilateral development banks, and from private and not-for-profit sector to actively participate and transform procurement so that it supports recovery, resilience, and sustainability. Thank you, and I wish you well for the conference.
Thank you so much, Bruce. We appreciate your words, and just to echo some of those words. It's important that everyone here participating. I see many people sending their greetings in the chat. So I'd love to see already early in the event a lot of engagement. Do make sure that you're connecting with each other. Follow up with each other. Connect on the chat. Make sure that you're collaborating, finding opportunities to partner throughout the event. All right. Thank you again, Bruce. We appreciate your time. Next, we are excited to have the Honorable Mr. Kim Chung-woo, the Administrator for Public Procurement Service in the Republic of Korea. Mr. Chung-woo has recorded a very important message for all of us, and we will now go to the video.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Jung-woo Kim, Administrator of Public Procurement Service of the Republic of Korea. I'd like to express my deep appreciation to the Asian Development Bank and the delegates participating virtually for their sincere dedication to the 7th Annual Conference of the Asia-Pacific Public E-Procurement Network. After the first online meeting last year, we are gathering virtually again this year due to the prolonged COVID-19 pandemic. Although we are gradually recovering from the crisis, we cannot yet fully return to our daily lives. However, I'm delighted to meet you all at the online conference of the Asia-Pacific Public E-Procurement Network in 2021. Amid the global pandemic, the significance of public procurement has been growing for a seamless supply of goods and services. We are all aware that the role of public procurement has been emphasized more than ever in the combat against the pandemic. The importance of e-procurement has also been increasingly stressed in response to the current challenges. In this regard, the Asia-Pacific Public E-Procurement Network can play a great role in ensuring a resilient recovery after COVID-19 and establishing a strategic direction for public procurement service and e-procurement. I hope that the 70th conference will be a platform where every participant gains knowledge to overcome the pandemic across the region and provides the best strategies in public procurement. Hopefully, all participants will gain new insights at the 3-day conference and make a difference where they can. Distinguished guests, taking this opportunity, I'd like to share 3 points to build back better through public procurement. First, the Public Procurement Service of Korea is to strengthen the strategic role of public procurement. Public procurement can significantly contribute to the national economy, considering the large share it takes up in the economy. Up to now, PPS has continuously expanded its roles while responding in accordance with periodic demands. However, given the present issues such as the pandemic, digital transformation, a growing awareness of social values and relevant national agenda, greater changes to the public procurement authorities are called for. Against this backdrop, PPS has made every effort to respond strategically to the rapidly transforming environment rather than staying where it has always been in its traditional role of supply. Now, the traditional procurement paradigm focusing mainly on procedures and formality should be shifted to providing strategic directions for public procurement. With the paradigm shift, public procurement could be well leveraged as a tool to come back stronger from the pandemic, achieve social values, and facilitating industrial advances. In this regard, PPS has striven to be more flexible in its procurement administration to practically support businesses in line with national policies. Second, PPS has endeavored to overcome the coronavirus-induced crises through innovation in public procurement. Innovative solutions in public procurement can serve as a growth driver for intensive businesses to join the procurement market. The government, with strong purchasing power, supports those businesses to make further progress in the market by preemptively purchasing their novel products. In addition, the Demand Incubating Program and the Innovative Product Scouting Program were introduced this year, and the programs have been well utilized in supporting innovative growth through public procurement. Under the Demand Incubating Program, the novel ideas from citizens, businesses, and public institutions intended to enhance public services are incorporated into feasible level solutions through public-private corporations. And the solutions can be further embodied, linked with other programs, including R&D projects and demand-driven ones. The Innovative Product Scouting System supports the government to preemptively identify the incentive products of businesses that have innovative technology but have difficulty in entering the public procurement market. Under the program, consultations are provided to those businesses in connection with innovation procurement system. With all these supportive measures, PPS has enhanced public services, preemptively supported innovative growth of businesses, and contributed to job creation. Last but not least, PPS has prepared to revamp Korea online e-procurement system, CONAPS, over the recent years. With the current epidemic situation, the global trend is going digital, and our proactive strategy for a further advanced e-procurement system is gaining ground. PPS is preparing for a new leap for us to shape the procurement environment where the next e-procurement paradigm takes from amid technological advances, including AI, big data, and cloud computing, and the post-pandemic era. To that end, PPS established the next generation CONAPS office in July, and it will complete the system setup by 2023. This project is especially meaningful to me. I joined the CONAPS establishment project when I worked at the Ministry of Economy and Finance in 2002. Now, as an administrator of PPS, I am working on the establishment of the next generation CONAPS. CONAPS has been recognized as an outstanding e-procurement tool to ensure transparency and efficiency in public procurement over the past 20 years. And the e-procurement system won the Public Service Award granted by the UN to a public agency that has achieved noticeable innovation in administrative service. Further, the next generation CONAPS built on the existing CONAPS will set the pace in the digital transformation era with the new technology and user-centric services, and it will provide insights into innovation of the e-procurement system. The current CONAPS will be completely redesigned as a digital-based procurement platform with new digital technology incorporated. The revamp will lead to greater efficiency and effectiveness in the public procurement service. What's more, procurement data will be used more constructively with the AI-based analysis working to improve public procurement services. All of this will further benefit the people and the nation. The next generation CONAPS will support Korea's New Deal policy designed to shore up the nation's recovery from the pandemic and lead the global action against structural changes with the international community. Plus, the new e-procurement system will strategically do its part in the digital transformation process accelerated by the pandemic. Under regional procurement experts, the world is gradually overcoming the pandemic thanks to COVID-19 vaccines. And the Asia-Pacific member countries have been working together to surmount the pandemic. In Squid Game, a global hit TV show these days, a word "gambu" comes from a conversation saying, "Gambu always shares everything with each other, no matter what," with this gambu spirit in Korea. PPS will do its utmost in sharing with the Asia-Pacific member countries the information on Korea's responses to our common challenges so that all regional members will overcome the crisis and regain stability together. Moreover, PPS will continue to work with ADB to bring greater innovation to e-procurement and share our expertise and experiences with the region. Once again, my heartfelt gratitude goes to all the members for your supportive commitment and participation in the network. Hopefully, we'll all gather at the next conference in person after coming back stronger from the pandemic. Thank you indeed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kim Chung-woo. We appreciate your comments, your remarks, and your encouragement to all of us. Many thanks to both Bruce Gosper and Kim Chung-woo. Before we proceed, please turn your attention to this quick video. Welcome back. So before we introduce our very first session, we'd like to share a few suggestions, guidelines, if you will, to ensure that we deliver maximum value and return of your time invested over the next few days. First, a reminder. This is a 3-day event. So each day we're going to be hosting 3 sessions, and all times are going to be listed on the agenda, and they are in Manila local time. We also ask that everybody change their Zoom names, their first, last name, followed by their company or affiliation. This is so that our speakers and moderators know who to address and how to address you when you submit your questions or comments through the chat or through the Q&A. During our presentation, we are going to be putting everyone's audio on mute. Mostly to avoid distraction, audio feedback, challenges like that. So don't worry about it. We will not be able to hear you in case you don't see a mute button or anything like that. It is already taken care of. You will, however, be able to interact with speakers and moderators by clicking on the Q&A button found at the bottom of your screen. You can submit your questions through this Q&A, and this will help us keep all of the questions organized so that we can mark them off as they are answered. Some people will probably submit questions in the chat. That does happen, but we do encourage you to use the Q&A during the session so that we can keep our focus on there and make sure that all of the questions are answered. And finally, we're going to be having polls during and after the session. You'll see them pop up. It is part of the Zoom application, so you will notice them when they come up. We ask for your full participation. This way our moderators and our speakers can tailor their content and presentation to your needs as much as possible. So with this guidance in mind, we are confident that you're going to enjoy a seamless, interactive, insightful, and value-added conference. And let's start off with our first poll of the event. Remember, this is going to help us tailor our programming to meet your needs as we move from session to session. So please take a look at the first question on your screen, which should be popping up in a moment, and take a minute to respond. Focus on the top 2 or 3 reasons that really motivated you to attend. Go ahead now. All right, I see a couple of responses coming in here. There we go. Now we're getting going. Focus on those 2 or 3 top reasons that motivated you to attend. Great. I love here. So what I'm seeing is the leading response here is the continuous professional development. And I think you're going to absolutely be able to address that here over the next few days. In addition, I think you're also going to find an opportunity to connect with others so that you can continue that professional development. I see here also rising to the top the topics. You find the topics to be quite interesting, and that's a big driver for this event. I think you're also going to find that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for you to insert your questions so that you can even have that content tailored even more specifically to your needs as we move forward. Let's see here. Expert speakers is another one that's rising to the top. Curiosity about ADB. This is a very important focus, of course, of the event in general. But we are here to support you if you are still going through the transition, through your own digital transformation. I think you're going to find a lot of the content here is going to help you as you look to make those moves. Also, do consider the speakers and the moderators and different people involved in the event as supporting staff for you to help you make this possible. So do ask your questions and stay in touch. So it looks like we have nearly 70% participation at this point, and we are clearly the number one reason or the number one driver is continuous professional development. So we're very excited that is one of the top reasons that has brought you out here, and I think we are confident. We are actually very confident that we're going to be able to deliver on that over the next few days. Okay. So I think without further ado, now that most people have already submitted their responses, we can kick off our very first session. So thank you again for your participation in that poll. It is now my great pleasure to introduce the session entitled EGP's role in the COVID-19 recovery process. In this critical session, we are honored to have Sarah Coggrey leading relevant, timely, and insightful conversation about EGP's role in helping nations recover from this unprecedented pandemic. Sarah Coggrey is a director of Global Trade Limited, a procurement, e-commerce, innovation, and social value consultancy. Before founding Global Trade, Sarah was the chief commercial officer at the New Zealand Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, where she led procurement activities for the ministry and the New Zealand Aid program. Sarah has also worked at the ADB, building procurement and project management capacity for its staff, consultants, and members. She also designed its Technology Innovation Challenge process. Previously, Sarah was a director at the UK's Central Procurement Trading Agency, where she led a program that implemented e-procurement across the UK public sector. Sarah is a chartered fellow of CIPS, has a master's in international trade, an MBA in financial services, and a BA with honors in business studies. Joining Sarah today, we have Mr. Jeff Taylor, who is currently the Director of Procurement Division 1 of the ADB's Procurement Portfolio and Financial Management Department. Jeff has over 34 years of experience working on the public procurement of infrastructure projects. For the last 14 years, he has been with the Asian Development Bank, where currently his division covers the ADB's portfolio in Central, West, and South Asia. Prior to his current role at the ADB, Jeff has also served as the regional procurement head for Central and West Asia, secretary to the ADB's Operational Procurement Committee, head of the ADB's Institutional Procurement, and chairperson of its Institutional Procurement Committee. He is a chartered member of the Institute of Purchasing and Supply and holds a Master of Science in Procurement. Also on the panel, we have Victor Nestulia, who is the head of the Eastern Europe and Central Asia Open Contracting Partnership. Before joining the Open Contracting Partnership, Victor was acting CEO of SOE Medical Procurement of Ukraine, the central purchasing body set up by the Ministry of Health of Ukraine for the medical public procurement. Before that, he was the program director at Transparency International Ukraine. His portfolio included several significant initiatives in the areas of system development, community building, and transparency implementation. He has extensive experience in the private sector and government. He headed the Procurement Risk Assessment Division in one of the biggest agro holdings in the Ukraine, and also worked in the Ministry of Infrastructure. Victor has a master's degree in international economy from the Kiev National Economic University in Ukraine, and has also studied organizational behavior and intercultural marketing at the Wirtschaftsuniversität Wien in Austria. And last but not least, we have Daniel Sanchez, who is an international public procurement expert with over 15 years experience in international development. Based in Washington, D.C., he is currently a senior consultant at the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime. He currently focuses on promoting transparency and technology in public procurement in Latin America and the Caribbean. Formerly, he worked at the Inter-American Development Bank, supporting the development of electronic procurement and integrated financial management systems. One of his projects there involved developing digital tools to facilitate the provision of critical supplies related to the COVID-19 pandemic in Argentina. Mr. Sanchez has carried out postgraduate studies on digital innovation at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and public financial management at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. We're excited to have everyone here today. Sarah will now introduce us to this timely session and begin the discussion. Oh, Sarah, you're on mute.
Roger.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Roger, thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests and panel members, good evening from New Zealand, and welcome to the first session of the conference. I'm delighted to join the delegates from around the world and moderate this panel session with our three highly respected speakers, Jeff Taylor from ADB, Daniel Sanchez from IADB, and Victor Nastulia from the Open Contracting Partnership. Now, in this session, the panel members will be available to answer your questions after their presentations. So please do submit your questions into the Q&A. To kick off our discussion, let's start with a poll question. Whilst we're waiting for the poll and the answers, I'd like to mention a few tips on how to get the most value from the network sessions today for your continuing process professional development. So you may like to note good practices that you could that could add value for your agency or country. Choose one or two that you can action quickly or easily. Do remember to access the presentation documents, which I understand will be posted on the conference website in December 2021, and follow up with the speaker if required. So our poll asks you how useful is e-government procurement in your COVID-19 response, and please choose all the answers that apply. So as we can, I'm seeing that tenders and procurement have been faster using e-government procurement, and obviously speed is most important in responding to the pandemic. Also, we've been able to facilitate the ordering from agencies for COVID-19 goods and services, and last year's conference talked a lot about how agencies were ordering personal protective equipment. We're also seeing that there's a lot better data on the procurement expenditure, which will be helping with transparency. And also that it has allowed small and medium suppliers to bid more easily. Okay. So that's great. And it's very good to see that hardly anybody has said that e-government procurement has made our process more complicated. In the early days, e-government procurement was seen as complicated. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is to move on to our presenters, and if possible, I'd like to start with Jeff Taylor.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm afraid you're going to have to look at me instead of some PowerPoint slides. It being a panel discussion, I opted to go without a presentation. Really looking at the title of this, I did make some notes, of course, but didn't put them in a PowerPoint. EGP's role in the recovery process, and I think it's critical first to look at procurement and EGP's role in responding to the pandemic before going on to the next stage to consider and discuss the role. And one of the big takeaways I have from my perspective at ADB and as 34 years in public procurement is that the pandemic has shown and demonstrated, number one, the importance of procurement in responding to needs of government and society. Number two, how fragile some of the processes are inherent in procurement. Number three, how constrained the supply chains are globally, with limited spare capacity. If we go back to our procurement 101 and the elimination of muda and waste in supply chains, there was very little spare capacity. Number four, the importance of information. The procurement information we've been faced with has been, especially in the terms of vaccines and PPE, has been some of the most asymmetrical we have ever faced, with very strong power on the supply side and very weak bargaining power on the procurement side. And that really has, I think, globally highlighted the importance of effective, efficient and resilient procurement across the public sector in responding to public needs, not just those arising from the pandemic, but also those outside of the pandemic. Within that, there is very significant opportunity to use the pandemic as a catalyst for positive change. And there are a number of once in a generation opportunities, I think, here. We have been forced to increase use of technology as we need to be contactless in many situations where offices are closed and lockdowns are imposed, and we can't move around in the same ways that we used to. And e-governance and e-procurement plays a critical role in that. Early on in the pandemic, we recognised that many of our borrowers' operations continuing to meet needs not just related to the pandemic, but broader needs, would be constrained by lockdowns, would be constrained by the inability to interact in the old-fashioned way with pieces of paper and meeting and getting on planes and so forth. So we did actually offer a very straightforward, simple e-procurement platform, and we were quite impressed with the uptake. But that was a temporary measure, and now we are facing calls for why aren't we doing this permanently for our borrowers. Well, there's a good reason for that. We believe that the borrowers should be developing their own platforms and not just platforms to use in ADB finance procurement. But what's the role of EGP in the recovery process? Firstly, it's a catalyst to change the ways that we have been doing things and drop the inefficient manual processes and put in place more efficient electronic platforms, be those cloud, be those developed by our clients, be those go-to-market, and go to third-party SaaS. All of them are appropriate responses to procurement need. And when deciding on which systems to develop, which systems to buy, or which systems to continue to build, I think there are a number of critical takeaways that we have to put in that as we move forward. And number one, that has struck me, certainly in the health sector procurement, is the lack of long-term framework relationships and longer-term contracts. That would have enabled our clients and ADB itself to meet common needs more efficiently and more effectively. We're still looking at many procurement transactions on a transactional basis as a one-off, go to market, buy something, switch off, switch back on when you need something. But longer term contracts are more efficient and more effective. So I would like an e-procurement system are perfect for entering into those. I was lucky enough to be in charge of ADB's journey and adoption of e-procurement. We went to market and got software as a service. And one of the drivers for that, in my mind, is I wanted the experience to be consumer-centric. We've all been using Amazon and similar Alibaba and Shopee in the Philippines, similar platforms online to buy stuff, and it's very, very easy. And that's because they're on e-procurement platforms. And all you have to do is put in your budget code. In our case, and those systems, our budget code is our credit card number, and transact. And that's the way the public procurement should be for the end user and for the requesting department. And I do believe that the pandemic, whilst a terrible thing, is also a catalyst for very good things, including the way that we're interacting. I would use this conference as an example, and you can bring in sustainability into this as well. We're interacting more effectively and more efficiently and more frequently because the costs and the barriers to doing so have been removed because we've been forced to embrace technology such as Zoom. My now 10-year-old, who was 8 when the pandemic lockdown started, when he was 8, he's setting up Zoom calls with his grandmother and his cousins in the UK. ADB followed suit a little bit later, and now we're getting quite good at it. But the electronic platforms and e-procurement is certainly within those at the core, from my perspective. Do promote greater collaboration. Another thing I have seen with information asymmetry is far more collaboration on the buyer side. I have fortnightly meetings with the World Bank counterparts, for example, about vaccine procurement. So we're sharing information more efficiently and more effectively. I look at the UNICEF market dashboard on COVID vaccinations globally, because the information from buyer to seller has been very asymmetrical and hampered by non-disclosure provisions. But I look at the work that UNICEF has done on the market dashboard, and that's a go-to for me when I'm looking at any vaccine contract subject to ADB financing, to really get a feel of where it fits. So as we move forward, I think we must harness the efficiencies of e-procurement, the redundancies inherent in having e-procurement platforms that do not require physical presence, enabling both suppliers and buyers and oversight agencies to track and manage the procurement process. And these systems work whether you're sitting in the office or whether you're on your iPhone, on a bus or a train, or on the sofa at home, rewatching Netflix yet again, or trying to find something else to binge on. And really to present efficient consumer-like solutions for public procurement challenges that move procurement forward well into the 21st century. I will point out that many of our borrowers actually have advanced high-level systems, and I think particularly about India in that respect. And those are really first world or developed world great systems that many of our developed countries would be jealous of and could actually copy, that are integrated fully, because it goes more broad than just ADB procurement. It's about integrating it into public financial management systems. It's about integrating it into Active Directories and having single sign-on and audit trails throughout that. It's about publication of information, both as an opportunity and as a contract award, and increasing transparency. And it's always been very, very important. But I think the pandemic has highlighted really how important it is. And it is an ideal opportunity to take a paradigm shift or a leap forward, if you will, in the way that we conduct public procurement. I'll conclude there with my face and hand over back to you, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. And yes, I agree that it's great if we can make the systems very simple to use so that 8-year-olds can use them. Now, I would like to move on to Daniel for his presentation. Please go ahead, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's a true honor to be here. I was here 2 years ago, and the discussions were very enriching and very timely for what we were experiencing around the world. And I'm very glad that we're doing a follow-up, so to speak, on what advances have been done, especially in the Asia Pacific region. I come here with some of the knowledge we accrued in the Western Hemisphere, in the Americas, because I think we have experienced similar challenges, we have experienced similar results, but at the same time, there's a lot to learn and to be gained out of sharing this information among each other. So it's quite a privilege to be in this forum today. I take a little bit of my time to briefly thank Galia, Nimde, Pamov, and the whole team that have been very accommodating at pushing everybody along, getting all the information and all the logistics in order and in line. These endeavors across the world that involve so many countries, so many time zones, and so many languages in many cases are not easy to undertake. So thank you for that. Today I want to talk about the lessons we learned from the pandemic, from COVID-19. What are the lessons we learned to maximize efficiency, transparency, and value for money in public procurement? And I want to start saying that the emergencies, all sorts of emergencies have a disruptive power in public procurement, have the capability of stressing public procurement systems to the edge, have the power of making us rethink public procurement, our traditional ways of doing it, and have the power to give us opportunities to try to think of doing things better or to improving things at a pace that we normally do. And emergencies we're familiar with in that part of the world, of course, the flooding, the tsunamis. In our side of the world, we had earthquakes in one of our countries for a second time. But emergencies are not only natural. They come from pandemics. They can come from terrorism. Or they can come from social distress, like it's happening in Latin America. This is a picture from the riots in Chile that also push the public agencies to its very edge and to their very highest stress levels in order to keep supplying the goods and services necessary to maintain a functioning government and to maintain citizen services. And if this very localized and very particular set of emergencies provide great challenges and great opportunities, we have to acknowledge that a pandemic of the size and scope that we've experienced in the past couple of years, almost 2 years, has to provide many lessons, many challenges, many opportunities worldwide to improve the way we provide services to our citizens and the way we source the critical goods and services needed to undertake all the challenges, not only logistical, but specifically to keeping this pandemic at bay in our specific countries and our specific regions. So I want to start analyzing on what this pandemic meant for public procurement and what the public procurement professionals had to face during these past almost 2 years. At the beginning of the pandemic, there were short-term shortages of PPE, some very key goods and services, a speculation and international disruptions in the supply chain, and the traditional sourcing strategies proved to be very ineffective as even framework agreements that the most sophisticated countries in our region had, after they were done and the contractual limits were reached, they also collapsed, or simply the suppliers just wanted to renegotiate the terms of their agreement because they saw their profit elsewhere in other countries or in other agencies or in other sort of contracts of the framework agreements they were engaged in. There was a new dynamic of supply and demand. Information and bargaining power are no longer concentrated. I would say for the first time we're not concentrated in the local public buyer, but they were concentrated in suppliers and intermediaries in the international market. And everybody with a cousin in China was trying to figure out how to get masks and PPEs into Latin American countries in any way possible. And we saw people just arriving in commercial flights with bags filled with N95 masks and going to hospitals, selling them, and going back into the next flight and do as many of those trips as possible until the borders closed. It was for lack of a better word, a shit show, and it was a very challenging for public procurement professionals and for governments as a whole to undertake the challenging tasks of to develop public policies, to create business and organizational government models, and at the same time technological solutions that could accelerate the hiring processes that would minimize the effects of the current market of such a novel and disruptive market, while at the same time preserving the principles of transparency, efficiency, and value for money in public procurement. And these were the challenges not of single public purchasers or public procurement entities, but governments and countries as a whole. Even supra institutions like the European Union had to think how to undertake these challenges, how develop these public policies, business models, and technological solutions, and still achieve the natural principles of public procurement. And in this presentation, I want to show you what happened and what kind of my region did, the region where I'm based and the region I concentrate my work on. What were the policies, the models, and the technical solutions? How do I feel we fared? Talking of public policies, it was very natural that emergency decrees were enacted immediately. 100% of the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean enabled some sort of direct purchasing and special procurement regimes, where every agency can go and just get what they need. You can find it in the market, get it, bring me an invoice, we'll figure it out later. Most of the countries had liberalization and tariffs on imports, and they were letting all PPEs or critical goods just going into the country. That 4% that we see had no liberalization of imports were countries in our survey. Not that there was a decision that they want to keep on imposing tariffs on these sort of imports. They were just island states that closed their borders very early in the pandemic, and therefore they didn't have to enact this sort of measure. Then also, of course, 80% of our countries enacted and enabled abbreviated processes. Don't worry, you don't have to give me all the documentation. We'll award it, and we'll only require the documentation of the winner. We don't need such tie-beating documents. You have masks, bring them. We'll find where to use them. They're not good enough for the hospitals. They might be good enough for the policemen or for some other first-line worker. You have any kind of masks, any kind of PPE, just bring it, I'll buy it from you. Then it was very interesting. This decrease also enabled the centralization of demand, which is this is very interesting. Two-thirds of the region has to explicitly enable the centralization of demand because they didn't have it. They really didn't have mechanisms like framework agreements or collaborative procurement or centralized procurement to procure things with only one entity negotiating for the whole public sector. So two-thirds of our region had to make it explicit, and in many cases, because this is an emergency, it was either an emergency commission that was formed that was put in charge of being the sole point of negotiation or purchasing, or a procurement entity that was already in place. These 34%, this third of the countries that didn't have to be explicit centralization are most developed countries, and is a sample of the countries who have a long history of doing framework agreements, reverse auctions, collaborative procurement, and many other business models that favor centralization of demand. We're of course talking about Chile, we're talking about Mexico, we're talking about Brazil, we're talking about Panama, and these were the countries who already had platforms in place. That the ministries of health and the agencies involved in the activities related to the pandemic were using already their platforms. They're already using their schemes. They're already using their business models. Thus, they didn't needed to make it explicit in the emergency decrees. Another we talk about organization and business models. This is a part that is very interesting. How the governments organize themselves in terms of procurement to undertake these challenges. The George Washington University did this very interesting model to analyze how the United States undertook the organization of their governments to face the pandemic and the procurement challenges of the pandemic, and they came with four very simple and explicit categories of government organization. A full centralization of procurement on the procurement entity, on the central procurement entity of the government. B, the creation of an emergency commission with heavy participation and advisory of the procurement entity of the government. C, an emergency commission, but with very limited participation of the procurement entity, a very independent emergency commission. This is borderline a special regime. And in D, plain and simple, and a special emergency regime where the emergency commission centralizes all emergency procurement. And these were in the eyes of GWU, the four organization models that could have been undertaken, or kind of what they detected as the United States. And how did Latin America did, if we're going to kind of filter them. This is very hard information to come by, because if you interview or survey the governments, they're going to give you the politically correct answer, which is somewhere between A and B. But since we have local offices, we have loans at the ADB, and we have a better sense on how things do, and doing a little bit of more surveying, we feel comfortable to say that things kind of were somewhere around here. You'll have the Brazils, the Chiles, the Mexicos, the Costa Ricas, and Panama, somewhere between C. And you would have a lot of island states and smaller countries, plain and simple, on the model D, which is full centralization, a special regime, procurement entities, the oversight entities, basic to non-participation in the COVID procurement. Then what happened with the technological solutions? All the procurement entities to some degree were forced to adopt, to buy, to lease, to develop or to implement digital solutions, technological solutions to the challenges that the pandemic was bringing. And it's interesting that a natural reaction was first to, for lack of a better expression, cover their backs and try to aim for full transparency, and they developed a specific procurement portals to report on the expenditure of the pandemic. So both civil society, citizens, and other public agencies will know in open data format what were the expenses that the pandemic It took on a certain time on a certain government and a certain agency, and they requested help from agencies like that to develop them to be up to the most high standards of transparency and data formatting, etc., etc. And that was important, and that was interesting to us that they wanted to show certain accountability from in a time that might have not been necessarily a priority. A lot of countries put some effort and focus on that. To me, the part, well, 37% of the countries didn't do much. And yet again, these are the countries who already have transactional systems, or they have EGP systems somewhat transactional, and they were more worried about making them work well to try to support as much as they can the emergency commissions because they were in C. These are countries where the Emergency Commission gave the procurement entities limited participation, and usually it's because they have a very interesting module to buy certain things, and they would use them for that, and they were on a need-to-know basis, and they focused their efforts on that rather than developing new digital platforms. But the interesting number to me is this 20%, where countries made an effort in the region to develop new EGP platforms to streamline their ongoing procurement processes and their ongoing procurement models to better target the pandemic. We have more than a few examples. There's close to 20 innovative platforms that we've mapped this time. One I like to highlight is the micro purchasing platform in Panama, where under a threshold of I think $2,000, all you needed to do was to present 3 quotes and award to one of them. The simple shopping of the goods and services you need, and that was the common and traditional practice in Panama. During the pandemic, with a decree that favored direct purchases, most purchases were under this threshold. And many people were just trying to get these 3 quotes, and they're trying to toward as fast as possible in the traditional way. But the procurement entity in Panama designed a platform where you can put your micro purchase bid, and it can be fulfilled in less than 48 hours for any supplier that goes into this portal can put a proposal, and they can close you in exactly 48 hours. So they raised the average proposal number per bidding process from 3, which is what the law required, was the minimum that everybody did, to 12. So now micro purchasing offers, which means the small bids for anything from alcohol gel to gloves to masks to basic PPE that usually fell under 2,000 when the hospitals trying to buy a small pack of that. Now they're having 12 offers instead of 3. So they figured out a way to achieve value for money and to improve the quality of procurement without hindering the rapid provision of these goods, which was very interesting to us. And 20% of the efforts in technological solutions were there, which is just it was just another show of how COVID has forced us into a digital world which we might not have been necessarily ready for, but we had to adapt to. And let's see how the region did. Those are the measures we took. This is the things that Latin America tried to do to undertake these challenges. In terms of transparency, we try to be the most transparent possible. As you see, more than half of those percentages need to be adjusted because I'm taking the 20% of countries that did more developed platforms, but more than half of the countries did portals, transparency portals as a way to try to prevent corruption and to promote accountability. But unfortunately, every single country in the region had corruption cases that were legally proved and they were sanctioned, etc. And that's a show that maybe transparency is not in a case of emergency is not going to be the most effective, although it's necessary and it's good PR. Is not necessarily the most effective strategy to stop corruption. It's a very good strategy to detect corruption after the fact. But if you want to keep corruption at bay, we're going to need more efforts for procurement entities to enact controls that are easy and can be deployed very rapidly. In terms of efficiency, as we saw the region was somewhere around here. GW did a very interesting paper on which were the states and what organization was the more efficient here in the U.S. at the subnational level, and it turned out to be there. The states that had very strong procurement entities managed to have full centralization. They just delegated the procurement of the PPEs, of the services needed to their procurement entity, and they were very successful at it because they had very strong procurement, centralized procurement agencies. Other states that trusted their procurement agencies, but they needed emergency commissions. They felt they needed more actors into the decisions on how to source goods and services that were critical to the pandemic, created emergency commissions, but with heavy participation and advisory of the procurement entities, using their platforms, their teams, their capacity, their relationship with suppliers, etc. They were also very highly successful. And as we saw before, our region ended up around here. And yet again, this is not a lack of knowledge. This is not naivete and saying like, oh, I thought we would do it better if we just did it for the Ministry of Health. These were facing realities of your government capacity. If you don't have a procurement entity with the capacity to centralize procurement, if you don't have a procurement entity, or you don't have a central government with a tradition of doing framework agreements, of doing collaborative procurement, of centralizing certain items of your government expenditure, out of COVID pandemic is not the time to try to make it work or to try to develop these expertises. It's better to let the health people to some degree of expertise manage some sourcing decisions, aid by international organizations or even private sector who are knowledgeable on this, and reserve the modernization and the strengthening of your institutions for later. This is part of what GW found in U.S. states. So before the governments that state governments that organize in Type A and Type B had much better results sourcing PPEs and critical goods than the other governments. Let's talk about value for money and efficiency, which is very interesting in this graph. We mapped the procurement processes of 10 countries in the month of May 2020, I think. And we found this very dispersed graph. The suggested price from the manufacturer for 3-ply mask was 2 cents per mask. As we see, we have agencies in Latin America that pay up to $2.35 per mask. And many were very close to the minimum price, but for the most part, most procurement prices ended up paying more. And this is because there was no aggregation of them. Everybody was negotiating on their own. Everybody was trying to get a mask wherever they could. If they would have centralized this in a collaborative procurement or maybe a framework agreement, and somebody called 3M, the regional Cabo 3M, they might have been able to reach the price that 3M was willing to negotiate in the middle of the pandemic, which was 2 cents per mask. Something very similar happened with a little bit more sophisticated type of mask, the N95. But we also see that some countries pay 50 cents for each mask. Other countries paid up to $8 per mask, depending on the time and the procurement process made. We see here a little bit more disaggregated, so you see the detail and difference in prices. But it tells us that definitely with the lack of information, the deregulation of procurement has prompted into some expenditure inefficiencies and overprices. And unfortunately, these are the overprices that later were punished by corruption investigations and so forth. So how do we qualify how Latin America agreed in this pandemic? I have to say we did okay. We didn't do great. We did a lot with what we had. We challenged ourselves in terms of our procurement capabilities, and we dare to try a lot of things that we never tried before. For example, it's not up for discussion that now, if you're ever going to face another emergency or pandemic, you need to have a very strong practice in framework agreements, reverse auction, and centralization of demand. We see that the decisions we have in our organization and regulations Our current setup only takes us to less aggregation for demand and inefficiency in our expenditure. We're going to spend more. You can qualify this as overpricing or known as lack of market research. You can investigate it, you can judge it, you can quantify it in a MAPS assessment. But at the end of the day, the current setup and the regulatory choices we made took us to less aggregation of demand and a lot of inefficient expenditure. When other governments with a little bit of the muscle of aggregation of demand and they have more platforms and more years in developing their procurement systems, organized themselves a little better and ended up achieving this aggregation of demand and the sourcing much better than others. But there's a silver lining. There's the new digital platforms that created a lot of value for the countries that would have taken 5 to 10 years in developing those platforms have take this technological leapfrog. And now it's our job as international institutions and experts and peers to try to nurture the things that were born, so to speak, from this pandemic in terms of technology, because we've adopted technologies just like Jeff was saying, blockchain, cloud, and working models around technology, agile, crowdsourcing that we didn't feel like we needed before. We didn't want to take the risk before. And for once we stop focusing on our legacy systems on how to keep them working, and 20% of our region took the jump, and that's definitely where we want to invest. And I think that's the big lesson ahead. That the risk and the things we develop under the pandemic that work are the things that we need to keep nurturing, investing, and getting ready for future emergencies, whether it's sanitary or any other type. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And it's been really very interesting, and it's very much links to Jeff's presentations about the ability to get longer term contracts into to control prices during the pandemic. And it's very interesting what you said about strong framework agreements, having centralization versus decentralization, the auctions and data gathering. And I will definitely have to look for that George Washington University study, because that looks very interesting. I'd now like to move on to Victor Nastulia, who's going to talk to us about open contracting partnership. And I'm sure he's going to be very interested in all the data we've already seen and provide some himself. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. Thanks a lot, Daniel and Jeff. Very interesting insights. And I will be talking more about data and how data can help us to manage procurement and tackle such crises as COVID pandemic. Obviously, we have to invest into the transformation of the procurement ecosystems, including framework agreements, etc. But we are dealing with what we have so far. And to start, I will quickly present ourselves. So we are a global initiative that helps partners to think different about public procurement using open government and open data to drive impactful and sustainable reforms. We are working in more than 50 countries nowadays, and we are promoting data standardization, but then the smart use of this data to make public procurement really open, fair, and efficient. So a quick rhetorical question, whether all present here can answer this, like number and size of contracts that are given to SMEs and local business to supply COVID goods, or contracts that are up for renewal for 2021 to supply those goods, projects that are under or over budgets, or projects of goods that were delivered on time, number of suppliers, where are they, and finally how much the government pays for essential goods like masks, gloves, etc. Most probably many partners cannot answer those questions. And that's basically one of the challenge of modern procurement systems and lack of data. If I ask you what you see on this picture, there might be a lot of suggestions, and someone will see here a face or question mark, or in Georgia people were saying that it's Hinkali. But actually that's a photo of dwarf planet Pluto made in 1998. That's the planet we saw using the technology of 1998. Today we see this planet completely different. We understand everything basically what is happening there, all the minerals, and so on. That's because technologies evolve, and we managed to basically get better resolutions, better approach to distance locations in our galaxy. What happens with public procurement systems? And basically the same. Technology evolved. And if even 10 years or 5 years, and maybe even now some partners are seeing procurement like this, paper archives and a lot of paper transactions with kilometers of faxes to actually inform about tender opportunities and submit bids. Many partners actually see procurement systems like this. So in the region, we already have a lot of great electronic procurement systems that support communications between public officials and suppliers, between buyers and suppliers, that make it easier to advertise the contract, to identify your suppliers, and basically implement the contracts. But the main challenge that most of the e-procurement systems are designed to support transactions, not to generate insights. And what could help us to generate insights, to make actually procurement management really data-driven, as Bruce was saying in the very beginning, is actually investing into data. Our organization is very much focused on data improvement all over the world. And if you look into the electronic government procurement systems, in most cases you see data like this. It's a mess because it's designed to support transactions, not to provide analysis for public authorities, for civil society, for businesses, and for buyers. But what to do with this mess? One can do several exercises, and talented players can basically quickly collect this data and structure this data to make a really great use. But there is a systemic solution, which is open contracting data standard. That's a standard developed by our organization. It's a publication schema that prescribes how to collect, structure, and publish data throughout the whole contracting cycle, from planning to contract implementation. And even if you have these pieces of contracting cycle in different systems, like planning in a Ministry of Finance, tendering in some state-owned enterprise, and budgeting or payments in Treasury, having OCDS, you will be able to see the whole picture. So again, it's a global, non-proprietary data standard structured to reflect the complete contracting cycle. And again, at every particular stage of the procurement process, you see all the details about every particular transaction. And when you have the standard inside of your EGP or mapped to this standard, you will be able to generate tons of insights. So having the standard, you will be able to sort this data, arrange, present it visually, and then tell any story you need to, whether you are controlling authority, whether you are public official or supplier, or civil society activist who wants to identify violations, corruption, or the opposite good practices to promote them. So that's the value of data in web, and we have to invest it. That's pretty complex thing, and if you check the OCDS data, this will look like this. Obviously, data people will be super happy, and they will be just excited to experiment with this data. But for most of users, for thousands and hundreds of thousands all over the world, people who work with public procurement system, for buyers or for suppliers, this is crazy stuff. Obviously, we have to invest into the infrastructure to our partners to generate insights and manage procurement properly, to develop data-driven and evidence-based policy. So again, our organization supports our partners with the development of infrastructure that simplifies understanding of those crazy figures and helps to generate quick insights from this data. When pandemic started, we developed a guide how to collect, publish, and visualize procurement data. And we had a lot of partners who actually use this guide or decided to do it without this advice, but still understood that there is a very high need to standardize COVID procurement data. And right now, I will show you several examples, because one thing is to talk about data and to talk about insights, but it's better to show once rather than explain 100 times. So here you see a business intelligence tool publicly available from famous Ukraine public procurement system, Prozoro. Everyone can use it, from buyers to suppliers and controlling authorities. So what Ukraine did when pandemic started, they decided to tag each particular contract related to COVID pandemic with a respective data sign. So what we can do, we can go to a dashboard that represents the share of different contracts, and we see like reporting, negotiation, etc. We can select COVID pandemic immediately, and you can see without any delays, real time, as of today, number of COVID contracts, almost 200,000 contracts as of today, out of 7 million contracts in Ukraine procurement system for the last 2 years. We can go deeper and understand what actually was bought for this money. The biggest portion of this expenditure was medical expenditures, obviously. Let's go deeper and identify some goods, and there are like ventilators. So let's limit our selection, and let's try to understand who was actually supplying these ventilators. So again, we see that there was almost 5,000 procurement of ventilators for $100 million in Ukraine over the last 2 years using COVID procedure. And okay, let's answer the question I asked in the very beginning. What was the scale of companies that supplied the most number of ventilators to support Ukrainian public procurement COVID response? So we see that in terms of values, it was actually small and medium business, not large companies, because they were much more flexible in response to pandemic. Obviously, there was a shortage, and they had to be creative to understand how they can collect those ventilators, how they can import them, and so on. But then if we go further and want to understand what is actually happening with the contracts for these ventilators, we can go to the detailed dashboard that shows us the status of this contract, and we can select all contracts that were either active or already performed or cancelled with or without payment. We can select immediately contracts that were performed with some payments. There was 48 contracts like this. We can see all of the details about every particular procedure. Who was the buyer? Who was the supplier? What was the price? What was the unit price? And so on. And eventually, if we are interested, we can go to a particular lot to drill down to paper or to documents like specification, etc. Or we can go to the card of the bidder if we want to actually drill deeper and understand who was the bidder who received the contract, but then actually was terminated and wasn't able to implement this. So we can go to the card of this bidder, remove some other selections we did before, and see more details about this bidder, whether actually it had an history working with the government before pandemic. We see that this bidder started working with the government in June 2020. So that's just the first quick insight, and that's Ukraine. What happens, for example, in the Kyrgyz Republic? ADB supported the Kyrgyz Republic with the development of EGP system in 2015, and I would say that it's a very good electronic procurement system, and thanks to constant support from international development partners, it's actually getting better and better. And Kyrgyz Republic is lucky to have another round of support from ADB to improve their system to support even more, let's say, user-friendly transactions, but also more insights. So that's a dashboard we developed for our Kyrgyz partners. And I will quickly show you the use case of analysis of direct method. So you probably will be surprised, but Kyrgyzstan decided to limit the use of non-competitive procedure during the pandemic and overall in the system. So as of now, only 6% according to contract value in Kyrgyzstan are non-competitive contracts. But they have a separate procedure, force majeure, basically that is used for some emergencies also to tackle COVID. And if we select this justification, we will obviously see that in 2019, the use of force majeure was very limited. Yes, the end of the year, everyone was trying to utilize the budget, but then in the beginning of pandemic, it jumped enormously. We can switch it to the contract value and see what was the response in terms of the contract value. We see that the biggest spend in terms of value was in 2020, then it dropped down, and now Kyrgyz Republic had another wave, so they had to react again and use this justification to conduct procurement. With this dashboard, we can easily see who was supplying what buyers, what bidders in terms of geography, in terms of statistics. So for example, if we are interested in the biggest buyers in Kyrgyz Republic, we can easily sort for the contract value and see this picture that it was actually the reserve fund that was securing needed goods for the whole nation. You can easily export this into your database. But what can buyers do using this data? Again, for example, pandemic started and everyone was trying to understand who can supply masks. So imagine you are a buyer looking for the supplier of masks. So you, as the system is pretty well developed and there is a pretty decent level of standardization, you simply type masks in the system and you see all the bidders who actually supply this mask. You can export again. There are 812 bidders. You can understand who actually signed the biggest contracts. You can see their performance statistics, whether there were any complaints. You can improve, let's say, your selection by removing, let's say, complaints from your selection to understand whether bidders were actually, good. There are only 102 bidders, and eventually you can export this table to Excel and with contact details reach these bidders to understand whether they have masks on their stocks. Going further, two more use cases because I have only 1 minute. But basically, we support Kyrgyz Republic with the development of medicine analysis business intelligence module. So I will switch to English once again and assume you want to analyze the procurement of certain medicines. So, for example, natrichlorid, it was obviously procured to support all patients, and we can select, this in terms of who's procured most. We see all the buyers, we see all the bidders, but let's see what was happening with the prices. So let's increase this table, and we basically see the largest price, the median price, and the lowest price. We can export this data to Excel sheet, and data scientists, data analysts will be basically happy to have such a structured data, and everyone can see who was buying with inflated prices and who was buying with the lowest price. And finally, business intelligence is very useful to conduct monitoring, and this is a dashboard. Unfortunately, it's not translated into English yet, but this is a dashboard that explains how many of monitoring procedures have been initiated, what was the justification to initiate this procedure, whether it was request or risk indicator, and what was basically the result of this monitoring. You can do whatever you want and whatever you need with all this business intelligence tool to actually support your needs and user stories. So finally, some of the tools we developed to support our partners' analytical needs are available on bi.opencontracting.org. You can test them yourself. You can identify what you actually need from data. And remember, if you have very well structured, standardized data, you can support any case you need. Procurement is all about the people. It's conducted by the people to support people's needs. And we all want actually to have more technologies in procurement, like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and so on. But to have technologies, we have to invest into structured data. We believe that open contracting data standard should be a must component of each open electronic government procurement system. We also believe that now business intelligence is a must module of every EGP, as it was with e-notice, e-contracting, e-payment, and so on. Business intelligence should be mandatory. One for public use, for buyers, suppliers, and civil society, and obviously closed solution to support the needs of investigative authorities and controlling authorities. Thanks for your attention, and we'll be happy to continue the discussion.
Thank you very much, Victor. That was amazing. I remember back in 2003 when I was first implementing e-procurement in the UK. Our business case was based on the fact that we would gather data through the e-procurement systems, and then we'd be able to analyze it. And it's moved on so much. Some of those use cases that you presented, Ukraine, are just amazing. And you know, if the suppliers, buyers, and the agencies want to do benchmarking, or the public wants to know where their money's going. We have those tools available on public websites. That's just amazing. So congratulations for putting together those business intelligence tools and making them available. So I think there's a very good use case there for contracting data standard to be able to use those business intelligence tools. So yeah, it's very interesting. Thank you. So we've had three brilliant presentations, and I'd now like to move on to a discussion on some of the topics that we presented in the session on how e-procurement can help in the COVID-19 recovery. So the first question I'd like to ask Jeff and Daniel is that in the early days of the pandemic, some countries said that they would use the COVID-19 government funds during their response to build back better. So Jeff and Daniel, starting with Jeff, what innovative e-government procurement good practices have you seen that accelerated the results of recovery programs in different countries? So Jeff first, please.
Well, a lot of it is obviously directly related to EGP. But what I've seen government do in ways that it's never done before is embrace what's already there in private sector, and that's the use of mobile devices. Smartwatches and smartphones have been about for a long time. But what I saw happening, I see it here locally in the Philippines, but also globally, the use of smart devices, iPhones, iPads, this, that, and the other, in terms of vaccine distribution, whether you're actually eligible. When I turn up to get my vaccine, I get to show something in my smartphone, a QR code that was scanned, and that was in the database. And behind all of those procurement systems, pharmacological vigilance systems, and so forth. So it was the use of mobile technology was one of the biggest things, and that's been about iPads for a while. Not as long as we think it. It's only been 7 years, but it seems like it's been there forever. Far greater collaboration, certainly I've seen between funding agencies, between ADB and its clients. 3 meetings in a week at senior level in the Pakistani government planning vaccine procurement. That wouldn't have happened 3 years ago. So much greater collaboration and support for the operation. Increased accessibility to procurement systems through the use of smart technology, definitely, especially mobile. More touchless transactions, the need be able to undertake and conduct business without physical presence, visible documentation. That I have seen a lot, and a lot more focus on the need for resilience in all of those processes. That wasn't there. You've got to build in resilience, and when you're building it back, and this is where cloud solutions, software as a service, and similar play such a key role in e-governance as a whole, and e-procurement specifically in the way that we build that. And it really has been accelerated by the pandemic because it was the only way to do things. The old ways wouldn't work. And it's a game changer, and a very exciting one, and a great opportunity for everyone here, I think, to embrace and push forward. And looking at Vienna's presentation with the data that comes from these systems that's critical to good oversight, fiduciary management, key stakeholder engagement, telling the public how you're spending the money. So as I said earlier, a lot of positive things have come about the procurement space as a result of the pandemic, and these are just some of them, and they just have been accelerated.
Thank you, Daniel. Over to you. What have you seen?
Well, thank you, Sarah. As you know, especially South America has a lot of geographical challenges. I was fortunate enough to help a lot of national governments in Argentina developing solutions during the COVID time. And something very interesting about some of these problems is as big as countries. And for once, the procurement entities have to worry about making sure that PPE and all the goods necessary to address the pandemic will reach even the most remote municipalities, which was never a concern of procurement entities. For traditional public formally, even as the international organizations, we also focus on the phases that end up in the awarding, and we're not really contract management is a pending task. But given the characteristics of the pandemic, we developed a lot of platforms, and as Jeff was saying, because of the necessity and the speed needed, we couldn't do this in-house, and we have to rely on the private sector, the capabilities, and we have to enter into uncharted territory where we're not comfortable, but we're forced to enter, which is usage of cloud, contracts of software as a service, using mobile technology to create a logistics to make sure that the very last municipality had the PPE necessary to address the pandemic. And we were not only worried about the awarding and signing a contract and making sure the contract was somewhat fulfilled and then paid. But now the procurement entity was worried that the actual PPEs were getting to the hospitals and to the emergency departments that were needed, and developing the platforms to make sure that we kept a good track of things was very interesting at the speed necessary, and the tools available was very challenging. And we're at least to the moment, I have to say that a lot of these processes have expanded the day-to-day procurement operations, which is going to develop a lot of capacity in contract management. And that's one of the great triumphs of the pandemic. And it would be a pity that anybody who has developed platforms or has entered this uncharted territory to leave it and try to build to improve the procurement operations as a whole, not just emergency procurement operations.
Thank you, Daniel. Very interesting what you've been saying about the new techniques that are used. And I certainly saw the big signatures, for example, being used during the pandemic because people were not able to sign contracts and they were passing around electronically. Most countries had lockdowns, people didn't go to the office, and it was vital to be able to keep the business world going. process electronically. And also, I have seen quite a lot of stuff happening into how you reach remote areas, how you make sure that things are delivered, that they've got the right quality. I think quality is a big problem for everybody in the early days, particularly around personal equipment. So it's certainly changed the game and made it a lot more visible. So I'd now like to ask another question. This one is for Victor and Daniel. So the delegates confirmed in the poll that e-government procurement can make it easier and faster for governments to procure and tender, and they also allow government agencies to provide obtain data on the value of contracts awarded, who won the contract, and even the price paid. So I'd like to ask a couple of questions. First of all, why should governments prioritise the publication of all data into the data standards when they're trying to deliver a COVID response? Maybe got other priorities. And secondly, how can this data be used to increase value for money taxpayers? So Victor, over to you.
Yes, thanks for the very good question. First of all, we believe that transparency and basically data publication should be by default. Right? So obviously it's good to invest into OCDS, but it shouldn't be only extent. It should cover the whole procurement cycle. And if talking about COVID, when it's emergency, it's much easier to conduct procurement, not report about anything because you are running late, you always have a lot of fires, but just imagine you are let's say chicken in the restaurant and at home. Would it be two different ways how you eat chicken? I assume that might be the case. First of all, it's obviously accountability. But then I believe that with my presentation, I demonstrated several use cases. How different authorities could use this data to actually improve their procurement management, to identify potential suppliers, to understand who basically is supplying most goods, for example, whether additional support to small and medium business in this particular sector of economy is needed from a public procurement as a development tool, or we are okay as we see it with ventilators, like 95% of ventilators have been supplied by small and medium enterprises in Ukraine. Or if you are a civil society, you can identify some violations. If we're talking about the price, I believe that for Daniel, it was like rather a big challenge to map mass prices from 10 countries, to collect this data, to standardize this data, and to generate some insights. But if you already publish very well structured OCDS data, you can do it in a real time. And if you do it in several countries, you can do a cross-country comparison. So imagine if you have a very well structured mass procurement data in country A, right? And every buyer, when comparing procurement of mask, using this data to plan and to prepare a negotiation position, because if they see, that if they for a certain range of contracts, the price, the median price, the average price in their region is that, obviously they will have a leverage to discuss this price with suppliers, and controlling authorities will be able to immediately identify outliers and conduct immediate ask questions whether what was the reason for such a high price. So that's just several examples, but obviously you can have much more use cases to support procurement management and to generate value for money to many.
Thank you, Victor. And Daniel?
No, I entirely agree with what you said. Precisely, our sample, the numbers you saw in my presentations come only from 10 countries, because the other 16 that are served, that we consider as part of our region, as part of member countries, didn't have the structured data that we compare easily and fast enough to start doing the research that we needed. Eventually, numbers, but as Victor said, that's kind of problem when standardized and comparable. I mean, for us to be this game of trying to mobilize procurement, many might remember the Propel project, the European Union, which was a first effort to standardize public procurement information, because we see the value speaking the same language. It helps us measure the things and compare our progress across countries, across entities, and even across regions. And I think in our environment, the international development environment, there's a lot of having a standard. Of course, for the private sector, there's a lot of value for a Ukrainian company to be in the Americas, in Asia. It's very interesting to find the same language when they open a bid, when they have to engage in the system, and when they have to go into a business intelligence module of a country and see what are the business opportunities. They can identify the same information, and they can adapt their proposals in the same way. I think there's a lot of value, but most importantly, I think is that the country is a way for them to organize the data they have, to better develop the KPIs, to set benchmarks that go beyond the traditional maps kind of mindset and assessment and every 2 years, 3 year methodology assessment, the methodological assessment we like to do like ADBs, but having a day-to-day the capability to do a cut on real time to see how the operations are being performed, and eventually the open data standards help us delve into more important topics. We can tag where sustainable expenditure is going, how is gender sensitive, and this is not a problem for sure. The standardization data is something that talk a lot about financial management, public sector budgeting, budget accounting. So I think it's very important that the countries and the procurement speak the same language and use the same standards for the data.
Thank you very much. I remember being involved in the purple testing back in the early 2000s, and it's obviously moved on now greatly. Now we've had quite a few questions from our delegates, so I'd like to ask a couple. So the first one from Abdul the start. I hope I mentioned your name correctly. He said that he had a suggestion that ADB or its regional office provide procurement training for employees of procurement regulatory authorities who aspire to advance their procurement system. So Jeff, do you have any response to that?
Yes, it's certainly something we do engage in. We don't have a formal procurement training system in place, and primarily that is because every IT ecosystem is different. So a standard approach globally doesn't work. It will depend what your ERP is. It will depend how things are structured within the organisation, what IT resources are there, whether you have an initial procurement bulletin board, whether you're looking federally at a national system, in which case building your own system or platform system makes sense, or if you're looking agency level where going to the market and to the private sector provider will probably make more sense to be through there. We do undertake about 15 to 20 e-procurement assessments annually. From those systems proposed for use in ADB finance projects, and from those regarded as training or valuable information for further development. If you flip the weaknesses into opportunities and have a dialogue, and that would be an area, or that is an area where we capacity development in procurement systems, and with our counterpart, because they get to see an broader perspective. But a specific 101 training adoption, it's certainly sensible. There are some principles such as the data standards that you've just been discussing, and you've got to decide what your unit is within a procurement system. Are you going to go down, as India is, for example, construction materials in quantity? That can be a challenge. Within that, you have labour. Within that, you have taxes and duties. It's not the cost of cement. It's the cost of cement plus those other things. But it's certainly something we're open to and we do on an informal basis. Gallia, organising this TA, may be able to speak more later in her sector. I would have no hesitation in recommending asking the same question again. And we do work very closely with clubs and the World Bank and others at EBRD and so forth on our approach to e-procurement. We're actually currently working on updated guidance for ourselves and internal policy for ADB and a set of tools for the MDBs as a whole that will update our whole approach to e-procurement. And those are actually knowledge products or learning materials around what we think should be in a system, what's basic functionality, in terms of audit, in terms of signing on, in terms of access to market, access to suppliers and so forth. So there is actually a lot and I would be completely open to any proposal from an EA, an executing agency, or trading or support in that area. And with the great support of the Korean government, we have the technical assistance fund. This could potentially be used for it as well. So yeah, fully support it.
Thank you, Jeff. I think Victor, you want to add on this?
Just one comment, if I may. I'm right now at the event that is organized by ADB to support Ministry of Finance and local procurement authorities, to increase their capacity. Definitely ADB investing a lot. You just have to partner and ask. Thanks for that.
Thank you very much. It's good to see that there are initiatives going on. Maybe we get people to share between different countries as well as facilitating through ADB. Another question we've received from Marco Grady is: do the panelists see any help to hack related on lending for projects driven by ADB financing? Is there any effort being made to link the on-lending procurement handled by national agencies with the procurement tracking efforts of the MDBs? So maybe Daniel, have you seen any of these tracking requirements or databases?
Oh, indeed. I mean, it's not the purview of the division that we want to, but definitely the Office of Public Procurement at the ADB has been very active, at least internally at the beginning, map data related to how our lending is affecting our execution and how the public procurement related to our lending. Our new public procurement policy that was released a few years ago is fairly new for the span of life that the Spanish have. Puts a lot of emphasis on open data standards, tracking data as part of the certification process, and that's something that we put a lot of attention in. It is of course our hope that all this information at some point benefits the overall reform and just improve the lending related of organization. There's a lot of investigation, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of analysis, there's a lot that goes internal decisions that I think could be of more use for public agencies. But definitely it's an area where ADB has been working a lot.
Victor, does the open interactive data standard allow people to see where the source of funds are?
Yes. So obviously that should be a contribution from public authorities. But for example, in Ukraine, in Ecuador, and some other countries, there is an additional field that explains what the sort of fund. And for example, the World Bank is using Prozorus is used for like small value contracts, and they actually mark all their procurements at the World Bank procurement. So with one click, you can easily see all procurements that are conducted following the national legislation, for the funds of international development partners.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Another reason to sign up to contracting data standards. Daniel, I've got a question here from Vidya Vianti. Again, I hope I said that correctly. So how do Latin American countries documenting their COVID databases and its monitoring process for future lessons learned evaluations? Do any procurement platforms established by the government monitoring purposes? So are there procurement platforms that do monitoring of public procurement?
Yes, Sarah. We, as far as we know, there's about 10 countries in the region that have what we call observatory procurement, that are places that resemble the intelligence module 5 to 10 years ago. But this is a more open data driven before the business intelligence models were more for the private sector, business opportunities. But this comes more driven from transparency agenda, and you'll find a lot of observatories. Unfortunately, most of them are not standardized data, or not the quality of data that we hope for. And the government, I think, out of the 26 we have, there's another critical mass of 6 to 10 governments who are carrying these efforts internally, but have not made them public. But there's a great concern mapping the performance of procurement and understanding what are the elements that make a good or a bad system. And each country is trying to come up with their own indicators and definitions, and the technology aspect of it is very important to that. We have an interesting dichotomy in the region, because a lot of our agencies are embedded in the Ministry of Finance, and they benefit from the culture of the Ministry of Finance of tracking expenditures, and having platforms for tracking accounting costs, to some degree of information. But also we have other cases that are more of like a tax customs that also have the budget and capacity to develop more specific observatories. I mentioned, and although they're hardly comparable, very well regarded efforts of their own when it comes to see how countries are monitoring their own data. It's definitely, especially post-COVID, going to be an area where I think governments are going to try to invest heavily in how they collect the data, how they organize it. And I think, at least until now, there's no more discussion about having those repositories of data to monitor the performance of the procurement systems, no matter the size of the country or the procurement process.
Okay, I think we've got time for one quick question, and then we'll wrap up. So we've had a question here from Asma, which is asked, is there any thought in ADB to assist developing member countries to move from traditional procurement in their fight against corruption? Unfortunately, we don't have Jeff here, but I'm sure both Daniel and Victor have a view on whether e-procurement
I'm Sarah.
Oh, okay. All right, well, Jeff, would you like to answer this question?
Okay, could you remind? I didn't get the question. I got the not here bit. What's the question?
Is there any thought in ADB to assist developing member countries to move from traditional procurement to e-procurement in their fight against corruption?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's one of the core governance pillars of ADB's strategy 2030. And well-functioning, good electronic procurement systems are certainly a powerful governance tool, a way of improving. I'm being asked to open my camera. I've been disabled. I've been re-enabled. So it is a very big part of it. And I am working across ADB and my portfolio. The default for every project we're financing is if not e-procurement, why not? It should be the default. For all of the procurement we're financing. And when we find out the why not, we should be working towards making it so. In the words of somebody with even less hair than me.
Okay, fantastic. I think that was a big yes from ADB.
Absolutely.
To finish off, I would like to thank Daniel, Jeff, and Victor for their excellent presentations and participation and great answers. Very inspiring. I'd also like to thank the ADB team for bringing this very professional event to support learning across the world, just not in the Asia-Pacific area. Thanks to all the attendees on Zoom for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you, panelists. Enjoy the conference.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much, everybody. Sarah, please don't leave just yet. Thank you so much again for the insightful conversation, and thank you to all the attendees who submitted questions, your thoughts, your views. We appreciate that. It helps create a more engaging and thoughtful conversation. And I do want to ask our panelists to video one more minute. We're going to take a quick photo. So I think we're going to bring them back on for a moment, unless that picture was already captured. All right. I think. Oh, there we go. We're bringing everyone back. Your big smiles for a picture. I think it's time. Let's get time here. I think we're still waiting for Jeff back. All right. That looks like we lost Jeff's video. So we'll go ahead and smile. We'll go ahead and smile here so that we have a little takeaway. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay. So now we're gonna have one more poll question that's actually going to come up here. And do consider your own time and take a couple of minutes to respond here. Looks like we still do have one more question. You should see it pop up in a moment on your screen. And take another minute to fill that out. I believe it should be popping up on our screen. And in the meantime, there it is. Now on mine, everyone should see it on theirs as well. The question being, what effect did the COVID-19 pandemic have on EGP use? So think of your own practices, think of your own organization, and how this might have impacted personally in your particular associations and organizations. All right, looks like we're getting a lot of great participation very quickly here. I see here that one of the greatest effects to be that it allowed you to shift your procurement to EGP faster. Definitely a very insightful thing. Well, we always have to look for the blessings of difficult moments, and moments right here. One of them right here. And what else do we see here? It looks like a runner-up here is still the same for some folks as pre-pandemic times. Well, I hope that here at this event that help you make those changes sooner rather than later. We have a lot of great partners, we have a lot of great attendees who work with you to support you on that journey, on that transformation over to EGP. Looks pretty consistent. It has allowed most people here who are responding. Looks like about 57% or so agree that it has allowed everyone to shift your procurement to EGP more quickly. I also see here for some that it had no effect. Some that had about 14% suggested it had no effect. They didn't have ADP before the event or before the pandemic, and they still don't have it now. Again, if this is something that you're transitioning and making the transformation, do engage with your colleagues here on this in this event over the next few days, and more importantly, set up those meetings for after the event. These opportunities to learn are great. We can get a lot out of just attending the session, but what really takes us further and helps us really implement and execute what we learn here is setting up those meetings, taking actions beyond the event. So do take those opportunities to connect with folks in the chat, also do the Q&A, follow our speakers, receive their slide decks. So it looks again like the majority agree that the pandemic did allow most people to shift their e-procurement a little bit more quickly than they had previously. All right. So this does conclude our very first session. We are right about our time here. We're going to now take a short break and return in about 15 minutes to begin our second session, which is titled Accelerating Sustainable Procurement through EGP. So take this time to respond to emails or messages that you might have. This way you can be ready to give your full attention to the next session. Do keep this Zoom channel open so that you can see the time remaining. There's about 5 minutes left. We will have the 5-minute timer that will help timer know when you can expect us to be back online and ready to start the next session. All right, thank you so much. All right, we'll see you soon.